I'm Lin-Manuel Miranda, and you're listening to Hard NOC Life.
Well, it's the NOC in full color, you see me? The Hard NOC Life, comics, movies, and TV. Yeah.
Welcome to Hard NOC Life. I'm Keith Chow.
I'm Britney Monet.
Hey, Britney. Remember last week when we were talking about Secret Invasion and its AI intro? And I was like, yeah, I have artist friends, and I have some artist friends who are like okay with AI, and I have other artist friends who are like, fuck AI. Well, one of those artist friends sent me a diatribe over email and was like, fuck you, fuck AI, fuck Secret Invasion, fuck Marvel. And I was like, hey, you want to come on the podcast and talk about it?
If you read what I wrote, I did not say fuck you, which is unusual for me because I normally start every sentence with like fuck you. But
in fact, he is the host of the fucking Do It cast right on the Hard NOC network. Welcome, Jamie Noguchi.
Hello.
Hey.
Artist extraordinaire, AI hater.
Yes.
I'm not trying to like pin you as like a ranter or whatnot, but you did, express some feelings. I wasn't trying to defend the artificial intelligence in the intro. I was just saying, I don't know if the studio that they used actually used AI in the sense that we usually think of AI when we think of these kind of like, machine learning and like kind of pulling shit off the internet to create. But can you explain your issue with the artificial intelligence and specifically how it's being used for Secret Invasion?
So the model that is being used for all the commercial models that are out there that people are paying for are based on data sets that have been collected from the internet, just scraped here and there with no concern about copyright or ownership or contacting the people who posted that original work. And so all of this stuff has been ingested in an unethical manner. And that is the primary problem that all of us have with it. Like, it's not that we hate the capabilities of these quote unquote tools. Like, in a vacuum, it's awesome for like ideation or for shitting out ideas quickly, all that kind of stuff. But the problem is the images that are used to build these systems have not been gathered in a way that pays creators who put their hard-earned work out online to get more jobs. I mean, sure, a lot of us put it out there because we, fan arts and we think it's cool and all that kind of shit. But also we're trying to work, like we're working artists. Like, we put it up so that other potential clients can see our stuff and say, I like that. I want to hire this person, or I want to work with this person. And all of these AI models that are out there are built upon our work. And we have had no say in that. And to see Marvel Studios, whose entire reason for being is based on artists writing and work and all this stuff, to use these systems in their show on their streaming platform is a big slap in the face. And that is forgive me for ranting already, but like,
no, that's why you're here.
That's the central issue that a lot of us have. And you saw a whole bunch of Marvel artists and current writers calling this out. And that never happens because comics is still a very small industry. And if you speak out of turn, you can get blacklisted and never work for a company again. And to see all of these creators currently with Marvel contracts calling this shit out in public, online, for people to quote and repost, that should mean something.
And I think a point that you made to me that I think that I didn't necessarily consider too is that when I, made my point on the podcast last week, I had said that, for all I know, and granted, I don't know much. That's why I had to have you on, because you are experienced in the world of art and I am not. But my assumption was that perhaps that even though that they use an AI generative like tool to create the titles, maybe it wasn't necessarily AI in the sense that we think of, where it's like, as you said, pulling stuff, creating data sets off of stuff that pre-exists, and maybe they've created their own set of data. But what you were saying is like, you don't think so. Like, that's not what they're doing. That's not what's going on here. It's not like they're just using their own kind of sources. They're still sourcing this out from publicly available art.
The going theory is that they use the model of stable diffusion. Stable diffusion is built upon like one of the largest data sets, the Leon, something like that. That one collected all sorts of stuff, including like really sensitive photographs of like medical procedures and just some other horrible shit that probably should.
Like there's a whole John Oliver episode about that.
Yeah. And so, if that's the thing they were using, that data comes from other places that weren't, if the studio had come out and said, we've built this set on our own stuff, I mean, it would look janky because there's not enough good stuff. Like Adobe is working on their version of generative image generator, and it's janky as fuck because it's using public domain images and some of their stock photos, which is another point of contention, because when people submitted to Adobe stock, they never conceived of a moment that Adobe would build these machine learning models. So they didn't know that they were signing up for this. And now Adobe came out with this thing, and a lot of contributors are like, hold the fucking phone. You never contacted us. We're not getting compensated. And now you're rolling this out to all of your programs. Like Photoshop has generative fill now. So
their ethical version is still not even ethical. Like that's the problem with AI right now, is because the nature of how it's used, we're not at a point where you can just use it as like a tool, like it as if it was, Photoshop or Procreate or something like that. Like this is actually still kind of pulling things that it shouldn't be pulling. And I think the other point that you made to me that I hadn't considered is that, the studio that's doing the titles for Secret Invasion Method, they've done titles for a lot of the Marvel properties, but you had made the point that when they did Ms. Marvel, when they did Loki, like they were employing like a stable of artists to do it. But for Secret Invasion, it's like 5 people. So like AI is replacing like 20 people who could have been paid to do the work on the project.
Yeah. And that's the second problem that we have. First, these systems are built unethically. Second, they're taking away jobs. And, the WGA is on strike. It looks like SAG-AFTRA is going to go on strike. And part of the reason they're striking is, these
AI. AI is one of the big reasons.
Corporations want to use these AI.
But it's not just Secret Invasion, and it's not just the AI titles. Brittany, we've been talking about Across the Spider-Verse for a couple weeks on this show, and there's been stories coming out. As beautiful as that movie looks, as great as that movie is, there's been a lot of stories coming out where animators and artists who worked on Across the Spider-Verse are saying that they were being treated inhumanely, being worked like slaves just to get the product out. And people are saying, don't expect Beyond the Spider-Verse to come out next year. Like we're kind of going through a thing.
Yeah.
Jamie mentioned with the writers, with the actors, with the animators. Like where do you see, Brittany, like where we may be a year from now, particularly if all of these folks go on strike? And it's funny too, like the writers have been on strike a couple months, and no shade to the writers, people haven't really felt it yet. At least like in 2000, if you remember back 2008, 2009, that writer strike happened, and after a couple months, people were like, okay, we need to get those writers. It doesn't look like the studios and the writers are anywhere near close to making a deal. Now now the actors are going to go on strike. The DJ barely, got through without going on strike. So like, and there's just so much content out there. People haven't, when I say people, like the general audience hasn't been like demanding new shit yet. So just, that being the frame, Brittany, where do you see where we may be with all of this content and work stoppages happening?
I could be wrong, but I feel like when the writer strike from a few years ago happened, it was still like, because I was in high school, or like, I think I was maybe barely starting high school at that time. And I think like it was like the beginning of a school year or in the middle of a school year. So it was earlier on where stuff is still kind of maybe in production and they haven't finished filming everything. So I think that's why it was felt sooner, because it was like, oh, we're going on strike pretty much. So that's why, a lot of shows that time got a lot of shorter seasons, because they were definitely still in the middle of it. So I feel like that's maybe why a lot of these shows were already done and finished for the season. So most of the shows that, probably would have seen the effects right away have not got them yet, and they probably will. And then obviously if actors go on strike, it's like, when you have people like Jennifer Lawrence and Meryl Streep behind it, like it's gonna be a huge problem. Not to say that it should only be beholden to like the 2 white actresses, but like, the fact that they're like going on strike and wanting to go on strike it's definitely saying that this is a huge problem and it needs to be fixed.
And let me put out there too, we're recording this on Friday, June 30th. If there is a strike, it'll happen on the 1st. So by the time this podcast comes out, they may have avoided a strike and what we're talking about our ass right now, or we could be like 3 or 4 days into the SAG strike. So if you're wondering like why are they talking about it as if it's not happened or if it had happened, we can't predict the future, motherfuckers. So
the future.
we are recording before the weekend, just so you know. But
Yeah.
I mean, Jamie, as an artist, right? I mean, you're not necessarily an animator working for these big studios, but like the point you're making about people losing jobs, but even the jobs that they would have doesn't sound like it's a good thing, because again, the animators for Across the Spider-Verse have been saying that working conditions are terrible. And another point Brittany and I have talked about a lot is the VFX artists on Marvel properties writ large, beyond just the AI stuff, like doing the VFX. There's complaints about VFX being bad, but it's also like they've been saying we're getting work to the bone just to get the stuff we get out, and there's just all this overwhelming demand. So like as an artist, like it's one thing to have a job, but it's another thing to like have a job that treats you like a human being, right?
Oh yeah. I'm a comic book artist, so we don't have representation at all. The last serious attempt was like in 78 or something like that, and that just kind of went nowhere. Or 78, I don't know, I did research on this, the date might be wrong, so people write in, tell Keith to not have liars on his podcast for bullshitting. But comics haven't had a union or representation ever. So like a couple of weeks ago, there were stories around the hashtag comics broke me, of creators talking about how they've been breaking themselves physically and mentally, just trying to get these pages in on time to get published. So like it seems like working in the arts is a labor of love, because the companies that are hiring you aren't going to treat you well. And the problem, at least with the effects houses, is that there's so many of them. So they would need to unionize an entire worldwide industry for the studios to actually slow down productions and give them proper timelines to do these great effects that they have the ability to do. And instead, you have it's like crabs in a barrel, like sniping at each other, working for the lowest bid because they need the work. So I don't know. I wish there was something from the effects houses, that side, that they could get together and form a guild or some sort of representation. Like I want a fucking comics guild myself, but unfortunately it's the same kind of thing. There's so many hopefuls trying to break in the door that like, even if the big dogs in the industry got together and said, hey, this is what we think we deserve, this is how we feel like we should be treated fairly, they could just outsource it to other places. And especially with AI shit coming in, everybody's looking at that as like the way to get decent art cheaply.
And then the comic book pie is way smaller too.
Oh, yeah.
So there's not enough, I mean, for the publishers to want, basically, for those who don't know, basically every comic book artist, not every, but most comic book writer, comic book artists, particularly for like the big superhero publishers, they're all freelancers essentially, right?
Yeah.
Like you're
no benefits, no residuals, barely credits on movies.
DC isn't giving healthcare to anybody that draws your favorite comics necessarily.
DC famously treating their creators well.
Yeah, right, exactly. DC, the paragon of the way Bill Finger just took him like several decades after he died to even get a credit. And
Marvel too, man. Marvel.
Yeah,
too.
right. Well, there's a whole controversy around Stan Lee's documentary on Disney too. So like, yeah, basically, Jamie, your advice to people who want to break into comics is don't.
My advice is to work with people you trust and to put out work on your own, because we're at a point where we have access to publishing. I've self-published for a while, and printing costs, they're still pretty high, but like if you are able to generate an audience, maybe you could run a Kickstarter or something like that, or you can make little zines, like stay after work and run a bunch of stuff on the copy machine, because it is always ethical to steal from your job. And make little zines and hand them out at cons and stuff like that. But like, don't look to the big publishing houses to save you. Go on your own. And if you do get the itch to try to get published by somebody, look for the big book publishers like a Simon and Schuster, that kind of thing, because they all have comic divisions or graphic novel divisions. Even though the rates might be low, you probably get like a royalty deal instead of a work for hire if like you want to work for Marvel or DC. Like everybody wants to work for Marvel or DC, but that's work for hire. You get what you get and you don't get upset. And if you create a new character for them, like a Venom, they own the Venom.
Right.
Todd McFarlane gets no piece of that action.
Even if you do create half the shit that they use in the movie, they won't put your name in it because Mark Waid didn't get a credit at the end of The Flash, and he was like, I was responsible for half the shit that was in the movie. So
yeah,
it doesn't necessarily matter. But speaking of conventions,
we need representation.
Speaking of publishers and conventions and potential strikes, you know, like, I don't know, Brittany, if you've seen the list of folks who are backing out of Comic-Con.
Oh, I saw that.
But
no
Marvel.
Ouch.
Oh,
Warner Brothers hasn't decided, but there's no Marvel, no Disney, none of the studios, no Netflix, no HBO. None of the studios are going to be at Comic-Con this year.
Yeah.
They released, I think, the floor plan for the exhibit hall, and it looks like Comic-Con from 30 years ago. Like there's no big booths, right? It's all
Keith,
like it's a comic book convention.
Keith, you gotta get a booth. You gotta do something for the 10th.
I don't know if they're handing out. I don't know if they're handing out booths, but there's not a big presence from the big studios. And you know, one of the big news drops this week, Brittany, was who's going to be in Superman Legacy, and a lot of people were assuming that would be announced at Comic-Con. But I think because of the SAG strike, there probably won't be. Even if Warner Brothers says we're coming to Comic-Con, they're not going to bring any actors because the actors might potentially be on strike in July. Mm-hmm. So they dropped the big bomb. We have a Superman and Lois. Do you have any opinions on David Corenswet and Rachel Brosnahan?
So it took me a second to remember exactly who David is. So
well, he hasn't been in a lot of things.
No, but I actually really did like the show Hollywood, as you guys remember. I like hyped it up and said it was like a really nice show of like what could have been, which I think makes it frustrating at the same time because it's like, ugh. But I didn't realize he was like the main dude who was like, you know, really trying to like break in as an actor.
Right.
All that. And so he was really great on that show, and he does have very much like, it's funny because he kind of does have Christopher Reeves vibes in a way. So
yeah, Corenswet is like, speaking of AI, it's as if you like gave the AI prompt to like give me a Superman, and the AI just pulled Tom Welling, Henry Cavill, Christopher Reeve together and was like, here.
Yeah, that's exactly what he looks like.
We need the
like
ultimate white man.
Yeah, he's been in a few things. I mean, he hasn't broken through yet, but I was telling Jamie right before we started recording that I started watching We Own the City Again, which is the David Simon spiritual successor to The Wire. It's about Wayne Jenkins, this cop in Baltimore who was leading like a bunch of bad cops in Baltimore, played by John Bernthal, speaking of superhero actors. It's a really good show, and Dave Corenswet plays one of the cops on the show, and he's really good, and he's totally unrecognizable, so that bodes well for like the Clark Kent Superman thing, because like I didn't even know it was him until I went back to rewatch it after he was cast as Superman, and he's really good in it. And so I'm excited. Dave Corenswet was one of my like fan casts for a while. Before we get into who else could have been, what did you think of Rachel Brosnahan, who's the marvelous Ms. Maisel? I don't know if you watched that.
I never watched it, so like I don't have a good opinion on her as an actor, but I'm sure she's great because she always wins awards and stuff. So I was still hoping though that at least one of the two would have been played by a person of color. Though I believe they may be Jewish. I don't want to like.
They're both Jewish.
Okay, yeah. I mean, so, you know, that must be nice for the original creators because, you know, they were boys who were surviving the Holocaust who wrote about Superman. So I feel like that's a very nice touch. But yeah, I was hoping, you know, Lois Lane could have been like, you know, not white, Jewish white passing. I don't know what the right term for that is. But
right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, at least a person, and particularly with Lois Lane, and I'll actually get to it in my nerd popping. The thing I'm most excited about coming out this week is an animated Superman show.
Oh, yeah.
On Adult Swim, where Lois is Asian American. It's played by Alice Lee, who's, I think she was on Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist, but she's an Asian American actress. And Lois Lane's not just being voiced by an Asian actress, but she's actually drawn to be Asian American. In fact, your friend is on the show too. Zara plays the villain, and I've seen the first few episodes.
Yay!
And
Sarah's
she's
so good.
Livewire in the show. So But
Oh,
I'll
that's
get to that on Nerd Pop. And Jamie, I know you have thoughts on how white these superhero castings typically are. I don't know you're a big Superman guy, but do you give a shit about these castings?
I don't. So I'm a big fan of Super Sentai, Kamen Rider, Tokusatsu, live action, all that stuff. And every year they show a photo of the suit. And sometimes it looks cool, sometimes it looks bad, but you can't really judge it until you see it in action. That's my thing. So like these castings, I don't necessarily care until I see them in something like a trailer or a scene or something like that. I would love more diversity in the superhero lineup in general, like always. But I do like the fact that both characters are now portrayed by Jewish actors, because I feel like that's sometimes missing in the lore of Superman. Like you got these two Jewish writers who took a term from like Nazi super soldiers and decided to reclaim it and like, you know, recontextualize the term Superman as not like the blonde, blue-eyed Aryan race, but this immigrant with black hair who's just, yeah. So I think having that as part of the casting, part of the casting call, I think that's really cool. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's kind of unfair to judge them until we see them in action. Like people gave Gal Gadot shit when she was cast as Wonder Woman. They're like, oh, Giselle from Fast and Furious, she can't do shit. And then that trailer, people were like, okay. And that theme
or
song,
Robert Pattinson or Heath Ledger or I mean Michael Keaton. It's almost a tradition to shit on the cast before.
Yeah, give them a trailer.
Well, for the record, I was always on board for Robert Pattinson because I followed his career and I was like, no. He's done some good indie work. Trust me. He's
100%.
Oh yeah.
I thought it was an inspired choice. And what's ironic is that the second choice for Robert Pattinson's Batman was Nicholas Hoult, who's of course from The Great and X-Men and Renfield. And apparently he was second fiddle to Dave Cornsweet. So like, he's your boy, Brittany. Like, how do you feel bad for your boy Nicholas? Because he's losing out on all the superheroes.
I feel like he's in the way, like where, you know, kind of like how Ryan Gosling is a very attractive dude, but is kind of weird and better at playing those weird, like quirky roles. And so it's just like hard to sometimes. Ryan gets a little bit more lucky because people kind of also give him more action stuff. But I feel like he has that same sort of problem where people don't know where to cast him because he's not what you expect when an actor is good looking and white, if that makes sense. Like, oh, we actually don't know what to do with this white guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, like he's one of the few. One of the few white guys.
Compelling, but we don't know.
yeah. So I feel like that's his problem.
With one concern I did hear about, and it's not so much like complaining about the casting, but it's almost like it's too on the nose because David Cornsweet, everyone said, he looks like if AI created the next Superman actor. And again, I'm all for it. I think he's going to be an awesome Superman.
Yeah.
And even Rachel Brosnahan, if you've ever just watched one episode of Marvelous Miss Maisel and you're like, oh, she's doing Lois Lane on the show.
Are they both British?
No, they're both American, which is
they're both American?
a first too for a while.
Okay.
Okay. You know, Rachel Brosnahan is like clearly very Lois-y in Marvelous Miss Maisel. So it's like these are like the chalk options. And if anything, like people assume with James Gunn, especially, like he would come out of left field. So for James Gunn to pick like milquetoast actors,
it's Superman. All superheroes are named after Superman. They've been fucking up left and right, at least with Superman. Now is not the time to fuck around. Everything else, do your wild and crazy shit. Cast John Cena, do all that kind of shit. But it is Superman. The fact that DC hasn't figured out how to make a Superman movie work
for 40 years. Like they made it work once.
Years. Yes. He's Superman. Britney. Superman. Like you can't fuck this up. 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 So I'm giving them a little bit of grace on this one. They can't fuck it up. They can't. Like,
yeah. I'm actually excited. Like when the news came out earlier in the week and it was like they're narrowing it down to these three pairs, and there's one pair, like I don't know who the fuck either of them was, so I didn't care. But like it was like Nicholas, they'd paired them up, and like Nicholas Hoult and Rachel Brosnahan was paired up. David Corenswet and an actress who I was actually most intrigued by, Emma Mackey, was paired up.
Ooh.
And then again, the other two who I don't know who any of them are. So
I feel like Emma looks too much like Margot, and that would have been like a huge like, okay, so
she's also Australian and in Barbie, so it's like
yeah, so just be like, okay, so he's also just casting Margot again. Like, all right, what's the point? Like, I feel
Margot
like it would
2.0.
have caused that problem. So I think that's where he went with Rachel over Emma. And I don't remember who the other person was up either.
And again, Margot Robbie is one of those actors who like everyone looks like her, right? Like there's like a whole thing where like there's 7 actresses and they all look like Jamie Presley, Samara.
Yeah, Jamie Presley, yeah.
Like they're very much
the Weaving girl.
Samara Weaving.
Yeah.
She was also up for Lois apparently at one point. So yeah. But the funny thing is Emma and David Corenswet were the one that were paired up. So the assumption was when he was cast that she was going to be cast alongside. But yeah, I'm down for Rachel Brosnahan. I think she's going to be a great Lois. I think David Corenswet's going to be a great Superman. Now it's sit back and wait to see if the movie happens, because again, I've warned from Jump Street, Warner Brothers is like known to announce stuff that never comes out.
They're having a fire sale.
They're selling all their shit. By the time Superman Legacy comes out, it's going to be a Disney movie, I'm pretty sure.
God.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I dog on DC movies a lot, but I want them to succeed because it's fun. It's fun. When we were growing up, none of this shit was gonna happen. We're never gonna have like a Iron Man on screen. Yeah. Fucking robot man walking around in armor, blowing shit up. That doesn't make any sense. No one wants to see that. So the fact that all this stuff is mainstream, you gotta root for DC. Come on, like
100%. And Brittany and I are actual hardcore fans of DC and have been rooting for DC to succeed for a long time. It's just a matter of like when that time is coming, because they have not figured it out just yet.
You have Superman, you have Batman, you have Wonder Fuck Woman. Like that's the three. The
Holy Trinity.
That's people know those before they knew Iron Man, Spider-Man, and like
they used to. Here's the thing. I mean, that's what's wild is that the 3 most recognizable superheroes of all time, have maybe been surpassed. Like, you ask a 5-year-old today who their favorite superhero is, they may say Spider-Man and actually mean Miles Morales, which is awesome.
Oh, when we did that thing with those kids at the
school. You and I did Jamie and I recently spoke at a school in the DC area where we talked to a bunch of like elementary school kids.
Spider-Man was Miles to them. That's so dope.
Right. They didn't even think of Peter Parker as Spider-Man. It was only Miles Morales. But even then, like Iron Man, as you said, when we were growing up, Iron Man was a Z-list. Yeah. C-list at best.
You had to be deep in your nerddom to know about the Iron Man.
Anyone knew Superman, anyone knew Batman, anyone knew Wonder Woman. But like only nerds knew Iron Man. Only nerds knew Thor outside of like mythology.
God, the fact that there have only been 2 Wonder Woman movies. Come on.
Well, it took a long time just for the first one to come out.
I know, but that's terrible.
100%.
There should be Wonder Woman CW show, action-packed back in like UPN days.
I'll say there was going to be a Wonder Woman TV show in the early 2000s.
I saw that shit.
Terrible.
Who cares? They should have put it on anyway. Because the fact that it's taken this long to have 2 Wonder Woman movies and now no Wonder Woman movies is a disgrace. It's a disgrace.
I mean, the thing about DC for 40 years is that they've only done Batman and Superman movies for those 40 years, right? Like it took them until 2011 to do a non-Batman and Superman movie. It was like, Green Lantern was the first time they did a movie. Well, I mean, I guess there was a Swamp Thing movie and a Jonah Hex movie, but those don't count. Like we're talking about like Justice League type characters.
Yeah.
Green Lantern was the first one in 2011. You know what I mean?
They should have done Jon Stewart, because I think at that time most people's Green Lantern was from the Justice League cartoon. And so it should have been Jon Stewart.
100%.
Nothing against Ryan Reynolds, because I love Ryan Reynolds, but like and that movie was terrible as well. But still, it should have been a Jon Stewart movie.
100%. Like the Justice League Unlimited universe is what people like nostalgic. That's nostalgia for people now, and that's like the ideal.
Yeah.
But the thing is, DC's never gone wrong animation wise. Like they've always killed it
Yeah.
Space.
What the hell? Like, I don't understand that, because they release bangers on the animated side. Why is the live action? Why are they always tripping over themselves?
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't
I
understand.
think it's because they leave the animation alone, right? But then with the live action stuff, I think we were also talking about before we started recording, they're going to lose more money releasing the Flash than they saved canceling Batgirl.
Oh.
Right. And it's just, there's so many cooks in the kitchen. There's so many, like, Brittany and I covered this last week. Like, the Flash had 3 endings filmed because the studio heads changed 3 times while the movie was in production.
And they're all stupid.
So, like, and this has always been the case with DC. Like, there's always factions. I mean, the one promising thing about James Gunn, perhaps, and Peter Safran is that because they're in charge of everything, they don't have to have these little fiefdoms, which is like, the Arrowverse versus the movie side, or even back in the Smallville days, Alfred Goff and Miles Miller used to say that, like, we'd want to have a certain character, and then features would come in and say, you can't have that character, even though we're doing a Smallville Superman story.
Yeah.
That's why it took them 4 seasons to even have a Lois Lane on the show. So, like, even though they're doing, like, we're doing a Superman story, yeah, but you can't use these characters because X, Y, Z. Like, Warner Brothers has always been, like, micromanaging.
Yeah, whatever they're thinking is wrong, and it's provably wrong, because we can just show them the numbers.
Yeah.
What you are doing is wrong. Whatever you think you're thinking, it's wrong. Just because you have money doesn't mean you're smart, as we have clearly seen by your history. So shut the fuck up and let the creative people make a thing.
Yeah. Which, again, now that they put James Gunn and Peter Safran, maybe that's where they finally made the decision. We're going to just let them do their thing. But again, history shows CEOs get nervous and then they start, like, what about doing this, that, and the other thing? So, and David Zaslav has proved, like, he is not beneath, like, injecting himself, and, like, so much so that, like, Steven Spielberg and Paul Thomas Anderson have to call him and be like, hey, stop fucking with Turner Classic Movies. He's like, but I want to keep fucking with it. So.
Yeah, they all learned the wrong lesson from Morbius. They all learned the wrong lesson from Morbius.
Yeah, and they also cast Michael Keaton, so, like, we didn't realize that was the thread. Michael Keaton was actually the poison. Sorry. Anyway, let's take a break. On the other side of the break, let's talk about Secret Invasion, because they dropped another episode this week.
They did.
So, Brittany,
Yes.
you're a big fan of Paramount Plus, aren't you?
Oh, I am indeed. That is the home of one of my favorite shows, which I know some people, I've talked about it.
Yeah. You're not the demographic.
I know I'm not the demographic, but the show I'm talking about is obviously Yellowstone. If you don't know, I love Yellowstone, and it's literally one of the most, like, I'm saying, I know a lot of people like, oh, it seems like it's for, like, rednecks or something like that. I promise you, the drama is so good. It's just, and if you're a fan of Twilight, there's, like, an actor from Twilight that's on there.
Well, it's one of the biggest shows in the world.
Yes.
And it's got these, like, great spinoffs, right? Because isn't 1923 a spinoff of Yellowstone, and 1883? Am I getting those years correct?
No, it's 1923. I'm not there yet on the spinoffs.
But it's got, like, Harrison Ford and Helen Mirren. Like,
yes,
that's crazy that those are, like, actors you get for TV shows.
Tim McGraw and Faith Hill are on the 18 one. If you are a country fan, which Tim McGraw is honestly a really great actor. Don't know if you've ever seen Friday Night Lights, but he's a great actor. So they're great. Those are great things to check out. I have to wait for my mom and brother to watch it because we are such a fan of the show. Teen Wolf is also on Paramount Plus, and they released a new movie with Tyler Hoechlin is in it and back. So I'm excited to watch that finally when I get around to it. I know it's been like 2 months now, but it's hard to coordinate our schedules.
Well, the reason we're bringing up Paramount Plus is that if you click on the link in the description to this podcast, you can actually stream Paramount Plus for 1 month for free. We're just excited that we get to share Paramount Plus with all of our listeners. So click on the link that you see in the description and stream Paramount Plus for free for a month. Try it. If you don't like it, you can cancel. But if you love it, if you love Yellowstone, Teen Wolf, Star Trek, all of the Star Treks are on Paramount Plus. Do that, and you'll help us out in the process. Brittany, have you come around on Secret Invasion? I know we were, like, a little iffy on episode 1, but what was your opinion on episode 2?
I say, episode 2 has got them another week in me. I think also because the best scene in the episode was the scene with Fury and Rhodey, and it was so they're both such good actors. So it was really fun just to like watch them work with each other. And I don't know, like and now some people are like, and I kind of see where people are coming at where they think maybe Rhodey is a Skrull and trying to get Nick Fury away from stuff because he's, too close to it. But yeah, I really love that scene. And Olivia Colman, every time she shows up, is just like a delight, even though she's playing someone who's very sinister in a way. Like she's such a delight still, even in that like type of character. Yeah, and then Malcolm X is great. I can't remember the actor's actual name. But
Kingsley Ben-Adir, I think is his name.
Yeah, but he's like basically playing Malcolm X again. So I'm just like,
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, they just typecast him as a Malcolm X type of like revolutionary guy. So
I mean, I'm with you guys. Like the Fury Rhodey scene. I mean, I think the best in any superhero property, the best scene is always like the two end. I mean, they're not even antagonists necessarily, unless it does turn out Rhodey's a Skrull. Yeah. But like when you have two like people going at it at like a conference table or just talking, because my favorite scene in The Dark Knight is the Joker and Batman in the interrogation room, right? Or another Batman example is Riddler and Batman in the interrogation room. Maybe I just like Batman scenes in interrogation rooms because you let the actors act.
Yes. And
that's what Cheadle and Jackson end up doing. And it's amazing that like the MCU is 15 years old and this is the first time those two have ever shared a screen together. Is wild.
Yeah. I mean, that's the best scene of the series so far. I do not know if they'll be able to top that because there's so many levels to that. They're talking about the politics, but they're also talking about race and like what it means to be Black in a world that isn't. And then like there's the alien shit going on, and then like the scene with Fury and Ben Mendelsohn where Ben Mendelsohn's like, well, we got 1 million people here, and Fury is saying like, how the fuck can you do that to me? Like, there's so those scenes, those two.
And then Talos, I don't think is wrong.
I don't think so either. Yeah. I mean, those two scenes, if the rest of the series falls apart, I think those two scenes with just Fury talking to his friends and trying to sort this whole shit out. I mean, that's magic right there. Like, even with the fucking AI intro bullshit, those two scenes are magic. And I like, of course the action is going to ramp up and all that kind of stuff. But those two, I mean, like, that's the internal conflict for Fury right there. And it's everything. It's about like, his history as a Black man in America, his history as a human trying to deal with these immigrants and trying to find a place for them and failing horribly. And, dealing with that and just, I don't know. If anything else, I mean, this series gave us those two scenes. I'm here for the rest of it.
Yeah. I mean, I think like Brittany, you said this episode bought you another week because, one of the things we complained about last week is that they were doing a lot of telling and not showing. So like they kind of drop you into the series and you're like, wait, when did all these things happen? So like it was helpful that this episode started with a previously on, which was basically Captain Marvel, right? Like it's like, for those of you who didn't see Captain Marvel, here's all the stuff that's relevant from that movie. And then they had that opening where it was 2 years after Captain Marvel. And because if anyone forgot, at the end of Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers takes the Skrulls like, we're going to find you a home. And then 2 years later, they're like, we're back on Earth.
Where's Carol?
so what happened? Yeah, what'd Carol do?
Do you think she's going to make an appearance in this?
I mean, she kind of has to, I feel like. Because it doesn't bode well for her character if she like dipped on everyone and was just like, sorry, you know what I mean? Like, and we know Sam Jackson's in the Marvels and he's back on Saber. So like, however Secret Invasion wraps up, it has to wrap up in such a way that he's back working with Skrulls on Saber. So I don't know. What do you think, Brittany? Like Captain Marvel being, a deadbeat, is that like the best way to treat her character?
No, but like, I think also with, unfortunately, that there's certain characters who were actually involved in Secret Invasion that so far are not there, who is Carol's best friend, is also, I think, kind of like making some of the storytelling a little, they have to work around it because, obviously Jessica Drew Spider-Woman gets kidnapped by the Skrulls and the Skrull Queen takes her place, and that's how they slowly start infiltrating the Avengers and stuff like that. So I feel like that's like one thing that kind of they have to work around because of the weird rights with Spider-Woman.
Oh, that's
Oh, and
right.
also, instead of following the comic book plot line too, I feel like in that scene with Rhodey, like Fury or Sam Jackson or the writer of the show kind of like hand waves the whole invading the Avengers piece, because he was like, well, we don't want to involve the Avengers because we don't want them to pretend they're Avengers. And it's like, it's kind of like the Kevin Feige robot saying it's too expensive
Yeah.
to do the actual secret invasion from the comics.
Yeah.
So there's going to be no Avengers in this,
Or they're going to show up last second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, again, we don't know what was going on with Carol between, when we see her in Captain Marvel to when she comes back in Infinity War or Endgame. So it's
Right.
just like, we don't know what exactly she was doing in between all those years.
It's crazy that we still don't know though, right? Like that's
Yeah.
a big, I mean, I was always wondered why they set Captain Marvel in the 90s, honestly, because it's like, it wasn't necessary to set it that far back in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you failed for 30 years to find the Skrulls a home in this wide ass universe.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
And then what are you doing?
why?
Because like whenever someone says like, where's Captain Marvel? Oh, she's somewhere else. I don't know. Like she's never around. Like you got to come up with a better reason by making her character that old, essentially making her a superhero since the 90s. Yeah, you got to think like where the fuck she's been. Because it makes sense. Okay, she was gone from Earth, and that's why Iron Man is really the first to kind of like set off, because like they started the Avengers Initiative in the 90s with Captain Marvel, and then Fury just sitting around going, oh,
No one else came around.
no one came around. It was just like Captain Marvel's gone, the Captain America's stuck in ice, and I just wait till some rich guy puts on a metal suit, I guess.
Yeah.
And so like, it does kind of break the mythology a little bit by setting it so far back in the 90s. So I don't know.
Do you think Monica's gonna show up at some point?
Yeah. Is she actually the one on Saber with Fury?
Yeah,
At the
in the
time?
trailer, it looks like she's working for Saber. I mean, and at the end of WandaVision, she gets recruited by the Skrulls to work on Saber. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
especially if this is supposed to lead into the Marvels, because that's the next movie,
Mhm.
you would think, Monica would have to show up. If Carol doesn't show up, Monica should show up, I think, because she also has ties to Gaia, right? We said this last week.
Yeah, because they grew up together.
They essentially
could
grew
have
up
grown
together.
up together. Yeah,
Right. Gaia, when Talos and Soren came to Maria Rambeau's house, Gaia and Monica were about the same age. So even if they didn't grow up together, they were, maybe they bonded at some point in the in the house. So like we don't know where Gaia's loyalties lie, because she's, she seemed like she was wavering in the first episode. Then in this episode, she seemed like, no, she's with Garrick, but then or Gravik. And now she's like suspicious of Gravik because they're clearly developing a super Skrull, which is kind of cool. I did like the Easter egg of the different, Marvel Cinematic Universe artifacts that they found. But then all of the artifacts kind of like are similar to the Fantastic Four enough that
Yeah, give me the Groot arm and
yeah, the Groot arm is Mr. Fantastic stretching ability. Colosibion's hand, I guess, is like the thing because it's scaly. I don't know. The Frost Beast, I mean,
Frost
Beast would be
Human Torch. Yeah.
Oh, I thought Extremis was Human Torch because
Oh, that's right.
that's the flames. I guess Frost Beast it doesn't turn invisible, but
And
It's
the
like an
frost.
Ice
close
shield
enough.
or something.
Yeah, ice, and it makes you translucent because of the ice. I guess. But it's close enough to the Fantastic Four. Right?
Yeah.
I was just saying Emma Frost because they're totally rebooting X-Men with Deadpool. So
Yeah.
Oh God, that's right.
and there's rumors that Ben Affleck is gonna be
Daredevil.
in
I
that.
saw
So
that.
I'm just like kind of excited if that's true because I am someone who actually really loved that movie. Like the Evanescence in that movie and like Colin Farrell's accent as a 14-year-old, just like it was so cool. I thought it was awesome.
Look, people shit on Daredevil, and in retrospect, it wasn't that great. But I remember, and please, if I have to turn to my nerd card, I will do so. But I remember coming out of the theater watching Daredevil. And remember, this came out in 2003, so there was no Batman Begins on the horizon yet. The last Batman was Batman and Robin. As much as you like it, Brittany, I know you will stand that movie to the day you die.
I
But
have taste.
Batman was not in a great place cinematically in 2003. And I remember coming out of Daredevil going, man, I wish they would make a Batman movie like that. So take that what you will. If that revokes my nerd card, I will turn it in gladly.
Well, you kind of somewhat manifested.
Yeah, it did manifest that because
Batman.
it manifested too much because I was like, because now I'm tired of the Frank Miller Batman. I want another kind of Batman. I got like 7 Frank Miller Batmans after it. So
yeah. Michael Clark Duncan as Kingpin was a revelation.
Yeah.
The voice, the presence. I mean, that was awesome. I'm so sad that like we won't ever get that again, but that was my favorite part of that movie. Just seeing him take up space on the screen was amazing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I will say the Jennifer Garner Ben Affleck fight scene in the playground is real stupid in retrospect.
No, that's how you just establish a love story.
I guess. Well, as choreography, as storytelling, it works that sense.
You never got your ass beat on the playground and said, I'm gonna marry her.
So we'll see. I mean, it would be cool if Ben Affleck, I mean, he's in a better place now, like in his life. So he got closure as Batman. It'd be nice to give him closure as Daredevil, I guess. So Speaking of Evanescence and your favorite like bands, Brittany, before we go into Nerd Poppin', I did have a bone to pick with you.
This is about Fall Out Boy.
Oh no. Oh no.
So, granted, We Didn't Start the Fire was never a good song. Like I'm not here to defend Billy Joel's like songwriting. But at least We Didn't Start the Fire was in chronological order from 1949 to 1989.
Yeah.
I was super excited when I saw Fall Out Boy was doing an updated version.
Mm-hmm.
But then like it's one thing to rhyme Metroid and George Floyd. So Brittany, I'm gonna give you space to speak up for your favorite band here.
I'm going to assume that my fellow biracial Gemini, Pete Wentz, actually wrote the timing of the lyrics because he is their lyricist. And I feel like his mind is very much all over the place and scattered. And I know I love him, but that is how his brain works. He is very like, he does not think in things as linear as they should be.
Oh, so I see where you're going.
I feel that it was purposely written to be here and there because it's also like, yeah, I just feel like that's more of Pete.
So it's the best way to like encompass the millennial take on We Didn't Start the Fire is do it like Christopher Nolan Memento style, where it's like non-linear storytelling is what you're saying.
Yeah, and I know he's actually talked about that movie, so he probably likes that movie. So yeah, he was like obsessed with Ethan Hawke's monologue from this one movie that he has Ethan Hawke's monologue from that movie on the new album as like an in-between track between. So like Pete's much more eccentric and probably like all over the place than most people think. If you actually look at a lot of their other lyrics, you'd be like, oh, what is this guy on? Like, what's wrong with him? Like, I love the dude, but yeah. So I know people are upset about it, but I feel like they're the one band in the scene that I'd be like, they're actually cool. So like, don't worry about it. Like they, they're not into Trump, so don't worry about that.
Well, no one's saying that they are, but as I'm just saying that like
oh no.
As someone who was a kid when that first song came out, like, and it was actually in like history classes where the teacher was like, listen to this song, like
Really?
at least it went in chronological order.
So you walk out of
I
history
just think
class.
of The Office. When I hear this song, I think of The Office, and they're like, Ryan started the fire. So that's where my mind goes for the song. So I was like, oh, that's really cool that they're doing like something like punk and like political with the song, because I just think of The Office when I hear that song. So
they don't shy away from like real shit. But Jamie, you're trying to get a word in.
Well, Metroid Dread came out recently, so
they are doing a more recent Metroid.
There is a current Metroid game, so
which I think that's one of the jokes they make in this song, isn't it? Like they're naming shit that like Michael Keaton's Batman again or something like that. So are they talking about 89 or 23? So it's a circle. Time is a flat circle. Yeah.
And it's a 2D Metroid game, so it's not a 3D Metroid game. So like,
so you're right. I'm wrong. You're right. So
checking Keith on his podcast.
Check out We Didn't Start the Fire by Fall Out Boy.
Or you can also check out their new album, So Much for Stardust. If you are a Batman fan, I Am My Own Muse is the most Batman song that anyone has ever written. I'm sorry. Maybe besides Prince. So it's
Wait, when Fall Out Boy does like the remix of Party Man, I'll be there.
Ooh.
but yeah, the I Am My Own Muse off of the new album is definitely like it's a banger. Highly recommend. I love the violins on that song. It's gorgeous. I hope they play it when I see them Monday. So yeah.
Okay. I just Fall Out Boy was trending this week, and I was like, all right,
I know.
can't not talk about it with.
They're like, no one talked about how great their new album was, but everyone's so mad about this.
Well, it was
one
almost like,
thing.
I mean, because my thing was like, did they release this as a joke? But then when you look at the lyrics, it's like, oh wait, they're not joking. They're like, this is serious.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Hell yeah.
now that we got that out the way,
Hell yeah.
Amy, as our special guest, I'll let you go first. What's nerd popping this week?
Oh, I don't know. I guess this is not really nerd popping, but I just had a colonoscopy. I don't know if people talk about
Something's popping.
I don't know if people talk about personal health on your podcast, Keith, but I'm gonna talk about it.
Go for it.
So they found a polyp, they cut it out, and we'll find out later if it's like a thing.
Oh,
But the age is like 45. So if you're 45, if you remember Thundercats on the TV, it is time to get a colonoscopy. And it sucked the day before.
the procedure is here. Let me put this out. The procedure itself is whatever because you're asleep. It doesn't
You're
matter.
asleep, and that's
What
great.
sucks is the night
prep.
before.
Yeah, the day before you're on a all liquid diet, I felt like I couldn't eat enough. When you go to the store and you see the chicken stock on the shelf, you think to yourself, "Oh, the chicken stock that could cook you like a couple of meals." And then when you have to have a liquid diet, you look at the chicken stock on the shelf and you say, "That's not enough chicken stock." I drank a whole one of those fucking things and I needed more. Like you cannot.
And it's not just a liquid diet I'm cool with. It's that shit they make you drink the night before that.
Yeah.
We literally have to drink paste essentially.
Yeah. So
But all that said, go get a colonoscopy.
get a colonoscopy. That was my poppin'. Like literally.
Well, I hope everything turns out okay.
Yeah.
Brittany, what's nerd popping?
Honestly, I ain't got nothing. I'm just really excited to see Fall Out Boy on Monday.
Oh, I guess we kind of covered Fall Out Boy already, right? So
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't really going to talk about the song, but I'm just excited to see them on Monday because the Academy is opening for them on the Monday show. And, you know, like I've said, the Academy has not done new music or really played too much in a long time. So I'm very excited because the last time I saw the Academy is live was in 2007. And funny enough, they were actually opening for Fall Out Boy then. So
and you were a baby back then.
Time is a circle. Time is just a circle.
Yeah. Michael Keaton Batman all
Yeah.
over again. So I mentioned it earlier. This week, I believe July 6th, Adult Swim, not Cartoon Network, Adult Swim is going to debut the first 2 episodes of My Adventures with Superman, which is the new animated take on Superman. It's great. I've seen a few of the episodes. It's essentially like it's about, I mean, like all Superman stories, it's about like kind of like his origin. It's Clark and Jimmy's first day at the planet. They're like best friends and roommates, and they're all interns, including Lois, who I mentioned earlier, who's Asian American in the show, which is cool. And what's great is that like they center on Clark Kent because, you know, I've never been a Tarantino fan, but one of the Tarantino monologues I've hated the most is from Kill Bill, which is one of my least favorite movies, where David fucking Carradine, of all people, goes on this monologue about how Clark Kent is how like Superman feels about humans, that like he looks down on humans because his Clark Kent persona. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but I'm like, that is a fundamental misunderstanding of who Clark Kent is. Like, Superman is Clark Kent. Superman is what he does. Clark Kent is who he is. Being raised by Jonathan and Martha, growing up on Smallville, like that's who he is. That's the Clark Kent, the goofy Clark Kent is who he is. It's not a disguise. And this show gets that. And it's cute and it's like kind of anime inspired. I wouldn't even say kind of anime inspired. Jamie, you'll love this. When Clark turns into Superman for the first time, it's straight up like Magic Girl.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like Sailor Moon straight up.
Oh my God. Does
It's
his clothes
awesome.
fall off and then like,
Yes.
like holy shit.
It's awesome. It's very much like straight out Magic Girl.
Dude. Okay. I'm in.
Transformation.
I mean, I was
for
in
Superman.
before, but now I'm in.
Yeah, the super and again, and your buddy's in it, so like that's another reason to see the show. But check out My Adventures of Superman. It debuts on Adult Swim July 6th, and then we'll stream the next day on Max. And like I said, I've seen the first few episodes, and I love it. I wrote a review on the Nerds of Color, so check that out. And it's a great time to be a Superman fan, I have to say, because of the, you know, not just the Superman Legacy casting and the show. Superman and Lois season 3 just wrapped up, and I don't know if you watched Superman and Lois, but holy shit, the finale. The last 10 minutes of the finale is a straight up doomsday Superman fight. And no shade to Zack Snyder, but it's like 10 times better than the BVS one. And they did this on a CW budget. I mean, you know, all the shit we were talking about VFX in The Flash, like it does put to shame because they're doing this on a CW budget.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like there's some shady, you know, looking CG, but the storytelling, like you can look past shitty CGI when everything else clicks.
If it's a good story.
If it's a good story.
Exactly. And that's why I said that, you know, the CW Flash did that whole Flashpoint story better because it was just they went with good story. And at the end of the day, this is different forms of story, you know, telling mediums.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not doing a good story, like then yeah, if you have a terrible CGI, it's going to be even worse because it's like, oh, you just did whatever.
And Superman and Lois is another thing that, like, it gets Clark Kent right. Like, it's about the Kents, it's about the family, it's about Lois and Clark's love. And this season was great too, because it's like there was a whole cancer plot line with Lois, and really shows like people who get Superman understand he's not an aloof god who lords over humans. They get that he loves humans, he loves Lois, he loves his family. Even the Doomsday fight, like, it's corny, but like he remembers like his life with his kids and his wife, and that's what like gives him the strength to fight. That kind of stuff is what should be, you know, focused on in a Superman story.
Why don't they make a maxi episode and put that in the theater?
Yeah.
Cause fuck all this other shit. Why are they fucking around?
Yeah.
Why are they fucking around?
There are people who know how to tell a Superman story.
Yeah.
And like they're doing the animated show, they're doing Superman and Lois. Maybe James Gunn is doing with Legacy. Who knows?
You telling me the finale of season 9 of The Flash couldn't have been a maxi episode and been in the theaters like a Fathom Events bullshit thing?
Well,
that would have saved your ass a lot of money, a lot of headache. I know you didn't like it. I listened
part
to that
one.
Guy. Well, who gives a shit?
Yeah, part 1 of the finale, I would have watched that in the theater.
Yeah, put that in the theater. Put that in
parts
the theater.
2 through 4 of the finale. I would rather watch the movie.
Put that in the theater because you do not have footage of Grant Gustin smacking a woman at a club. So put that in the theater.
Oh, that's a good point.
Put that in the theater.
Yeah,
I would even watch that.
Jamie, as our special guest, how can people find you on the interwebs?
You can find me at Angry Zen Master on Twitter, although I'm hoping to get a Blue Sky invite sometime soon because Twitter is horrible. Everywhere else, Jamie Noguchi. You could put me in Google. Me and Jeremy Whitley have a book coming out on November 28th. It's called School for Extraterrestrial Girls, Volume 2, Girls in Flight. So that's in bookstores. It'll be places where you buy books. So look for that. And yeah, that's me.
Cool. Brittany.
You can find me at Hi Britney Monet on Twitter, Instagram, Hive, Tumblr. And then you can check out
someone hooked Brittany up with a Blue Sky as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then you can also follow my other podcast at LateRoom_podcast. And that's all I got for now.
You can find me on Twitter, the Hellscape, at the Real Chow, the _real_chow, and on Instagram at Real Keith Chow. Follow the Nerds of Color at the Nerds of Color on all platforms. Go to hardknockmedia.com to find this podcast as well as Fucking Do It and all the other podcasts.
I forgot to talk about my podcast.
Give us a rating and a review. You're great at promoting yourself, just so you know, Jamie. Support us on patreon.com/the Nerds of Color. Subscribe to our videos at youtube.com/the Nerds of Color. Buy our swag at tpublic.com. Just search for the Nerds of Color. That's Hard NOC Life. That's Jamie Noguchi, Brittany Monet, Keith Chow. And until next time.
Ryan started the fire.
We did not light it, but we're trying to fight it.
Canada better fight it. God damn it.